Hello everyone, Ben here, and today we are going to be continuing a series that I intended to do more of over the past month and a half, really. That's the King's Gambit series that I'm running from the book King's Gambit by John Shaw, and I'm just going to be adding my thoughts as well because I play the Gambit, and I've played most of these variations at some point or another, as in some cases both colors, but most is one color or the other. And today we're going to be looking at section 3, and well, I'm just going to get the position on the board. It's from the Qxh2 Gambit. G5, H4, G4, Knight E5, Knight F6. Bishop C4, D5. ED, Bishop D6, which is the main line of the Qxh2, and has been played about 5 times as often as the Bishop G7 line, which was what was looked at in the previous chapter, if I remember correctly. And so the simplest answer is, of course, D4 in this position. We're going to take a quick foray into one of the zany gambits, as I like to call them, with the Rice Gambit. And we're going to put a new variation in. Okay, that still works. I'm still recording. Good. I was worried because I had to move my mouse off to a different screen for a second. Anyway, and after the following sequence, black is better, but it's not obvious. Or maybe it is. Rook here, or sorry, bishop takes knight, rook e1, and then queen e7. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. And Shaw says this looks highly suspect, but the tricks along the e-file flow in both. Highly suspect, but tricks along the e-file flow in both directions, and I would agree with that. C3, D4 is met by bishop takes D4 check, king F1, bishop E3, and black's just completely better. So I'll go ahead and put that on the board. But the main move is... Oh yeah, so I can actually go back a move, and... Whoops. Cancel that. D4, new variation, bishop D4, king F1, bishop E3, and black is definitely better in this. So we're going to go back to the position after C3, and I'm going to copy all this stuff down and, put it in the description. I didn't do that with section 2 because I lost the PGN for it. But if you pay attention to it and make the moves, you can easily, you can recreate it yourself, but it is a complete mess. So F3, there are other moves, but this is the most convincing, so I'm going to assume Shaw doesn't even bother talking about them. And I would agree. D4, naturally, G takes F3, G takes F3, fatally exposes a white king, so that's not even worth talking about. Knight E4, exclam. Rook takes E4, giving the piece back. And this is very thematic. And I assume this is actually so that black can turn the tables on white and get an attack going. The only serious try, instead, after G takes F3, Queen takes H4, Rook takes E4. The Rook drops off following Queen H2, King F1, Queen H1 check, King E2, Queen takes F3. So we can go back and show you what happens after that, and it's just terrible. New variation, Queen here, rook takes e4, queen h2, check, king f1, queen h1, king e2, queen takes f3, and yeah, black is much, much better. So we're going to go back to rook e4, bishop h2 check, king takes h2, sacrificing, or actually winning in exchange. So what we have is 3 pieces for white, and black has 2 rooks. So, and pawns are, each side is only missing a pawn. So pawns are equal. And this is, and yeah, it says, and Shaw says black is better. And I would agree, in this position, black is completely better. There's nothing. And this is a variation. Black should file away memory. You won't see many people play the Rice Gambit anymore for a lot of reasons, besides the fact that it's terrible. It really started because some rich person with the last name of Rice was playing probably a casual game and made the blunder 8 castles and found that he had more compensation than maybe he should have, and that black didn't defend properly, and then he paid a bunch of top grandmasters to play it a few times in a few thematic tournaments, and, well, it didn't end up with it. You know, eventually people found out that it was just terrible, unlike some other zany gambits that we'll get to. So let's go back to the main line. 8 bishop b5 is absurd. So we're going to go back here and try out this. Oops, sorry. Instead, new variation, because any experienced player will blitz out 8 ... c6, c take, or d takes, I'm sorry, and castles, and expect to win in a miniature. If I remember correctly, there was a, I'm going to go ahead and actually post up this game. Yeah. I think it was this one. Nope, not that one. Nope. Trying to find it because it was a really good game. Is it this one? Black wins. I'm looking for it because it is a valuable game. Was it this one? Nope. Okay, well. Nope, that's not the game I was looking for. But let's see if it was this one. Okay, yep, it was this one. Okay, so after c6, ooh. Bishop. Oh. Actually, it came from the main line. Never mind. So I'll show you that game in a second. Yeah, and expect to win in a miniature, because this is just a terrible position for white, and black is doing very, very fine. And now it can transpose into a different game. So after 8d4, castles. Oh, castles. Huh. Silly me. Leaving leaving f4 in pre, and can lead to huge complications if white grabs it now. A few other moves in this position are Queen e7. And this is a move order that is apparently all downside with no upside because of castles. Yeah, and knight c3 allows black to transpose into section 5 and section 6 with 9 knight h5. Bishop takes e5 here. D takes e5. Queen c5 check. King h2 with an exclam. King h1 is messier after knight h5. Knight. Okay, so knight e4 is given by Shah as a main line, though he does say that knight h5, new variation, is probably black's best try, but is still very much in white's favor after 12 b3. Queen takes c4, e takes f6 is winning, as white answers g3 check with king g1 rather than king h1 f3. I'm not going to show, I'll show it. So queen takes c4, new variation, e takes f6, g3 check, king g1 rather than king here, new variation. Okay, king h1, f3. Yeah, that looks pretty good for black. So going back to move 11 here. (11g3), king, variation king here, king h1, queen takes c4, knight a3, instead of e takes f6, f3, and he says this is best avoided. So we go back to after knight a3, queen takes d5, not queen b4, okay, not queen b4, e takes f6, f3, queen e1 check. So we go back to queen d5, e takes f6, and it says white is much better here. And it's a mess, but I would probably agree with that statement. Trade queens probably is what I would do. Trade queens. And then I guess castle? I don't really know what black should do in this position, but it's not something it's not a position that I would want as black. That's all I'm saying. I'm just looking to make sure I didn't lose my place. Surprised that he didn't talk about... Okay, actually, never mind. He does talk about it, and he will go into it. It's in a different section of this book, the move that I was looking about. Because he says 9 knight h5 is the main line, but we will talk about that in sections 5 through 8. Oh, and let me go back to this after... What's the main line? King h2, knight e4, and white should win after queen takes... 12 e6, queen takes c4, e takes f7 check, king f8, bishop takes f4, g3 check, bishop takes g3, knight takes g3, king takes g3, or we go back to move 12. And instead of queen takes c4, g3 check, king h1, knight f2, check, rook takes f2, g takes f2, e takes f7 check, king d8, knight a3, queen e7, bishop takes h4, bishop takes f4, queen takes h4 check, bishop h2, rook f8, d6, c6, queen d2, and white is much better here, and if I'm reading the game score correctly, black resigned here, and this was actually, this line I just showed you up to here was an email game played by Efendiev Efendiev versus Wosh, email 2002. Anyway, so let's go back to 8 castles kingside. 9, bishop takes f4. And we would like to be consistent here. Black fails to defend f4, so we have it. However, declining the offer on f4 and transposing to a later section is safer. On the other hand, the following lines are great fun and just as tough to play for black as for white. Don't be fooled by the thicket of lines below. These are not just random moves that happen to work. The usual chess principles are lurking in every line. In particular, both sides must make many subtle and difficult decisions about their king's safety. And this is instead of castles kingside, knight h5, which transposes to a position I wish to avoid completely, where white can take on f4 with the bishop or rook, or on g4 with the knight, but black's position is preferable everywhere. The problem is that the white king is a fixed target, h4 is dropping, and the queens are staying on. I could give more analytical details, but there's already too much in these sections about lines white should not play. Note that positions with a black king still on e8 are very different. Then queen takes h4 can be met by queen e1, forcing an exchange of queens. Okay, so let's go back to bishop takes f4. Knight h5, g3, and of course black must play this move or else be simply and obviously worse. Yeah, that kind of makes sense just judging by the position. If you look at it, what is black playing other than this? You're targeting a loose piece, so you kind of don't have much choice. Also, white doesn't have much choice and must play g3. Bishop h6 here, new variation, gives white the cheery choice of rook e8 or knight g3. And of course, so I'll go ahead and put those up. And so here, or, here, both of which I actually would think are really nice. Okay, and this is even worse due to queen takes h4. So back to g3. Now black really does have a wide choice here. We shall start with a few minor lines before getting to the main option. There are 3 lesser lines to ponder before we look at the main move. Problem with knight takes f4, and I'm going to input the main move, just because it is something I do want to. The big move is f6. Oh God. Well, I know if I ever am in this position as black, which I probably won't be because I play the Cunningham, which is reviewed later in the book, I would never play f6. But anyway, the problem with knight takes f4, new variation, is that after g takes f4, the e5 knight can only be removed at the expense of creating a mighty pawn roller. For example, rook e8. And now king d2 was Mayor Gusakov, email 2005, but there is no need to unpin the knight immediately. Quick development was the answer was a different answer that could be played. Knight c3, new variation, f6, bishop e2 with an exclam. Now that black has weakened his king side further, unpinning makes perfect sense. F takes e5, d takes e5, and white has a vicious attack for the sacrifice piece, and also I love these pawns, and you're just going to push them up the board and have all sorts of fun. Okay, another move that can be played in this position, queen e8, a clever pinner. I would like to play knight c3, playing queen e2 and castle's queenside, but there is a tactical problem. So knight c3, planning queen e2 and castle's queenside, but the tactical problem is f6, queen e2, fe, de, rook takes f4, f takes, or g takes f4, knight takes f4, since 15, e takes d6 hits fresh air. White only has, yeah, that just looks terrible, as a matter of fact. Yeah, you can't play this because knight here, and what are you doing? White has only queen e4 here. Queen takes e5. And black's 2 minor pieces will overpower white's rook in the ending. Thus, the correct move would be King F2 after Queen E8. F6. Knight takes G4, transposing into section 4. Now, if you're confused about why the computer doesn't like some of these moves, I'm thinking the computer that is currently in the background running the most basic engine doesn't understand the position. Like, it doesn't even understand the tactics in the position. And that's the thing. A lot of people won't understand these positions because they are... the simple word to describe it would be a mess. The accurate word to describe it is confusing. Not something that is at all tremendously powerful. Queen E7 is another option, and it's not such a clever pinner. So instead of Queen E8, go back, Queen E7, new variation. Knight C3 says, your engine will probably be suggesting Queen E2, but I don't want to save the knight. I want to sack it and castle long. Here, F6, the move I am provoking. It is the only critical test. Queen E2. F takes E5. If Queen G7, which very politely offers white the chance to move the knight, then you simply just play castles long. And I really like white's position. I really like it. I want this. So F takes E5 is, of course, the obvious move. D takes E5. And note that rook... And in this position, note that rook takes F4 here, here, here is bad for black because you can't simply take here anymore because that's a rude awakening. As a matter of fact, it is devastating. I'll go ahead and show you the example line because if you trade queens, well, you're just giving white terrific. So let's show you one way to trade queens here, here. I'll go here. And I like white's position. However, if you decide to try and be clever and play this, you absolutely have to play this. We're going to go ahead and first check. And the king has to go, I don't know, here maybe. And I want to play here, but knight here kind of solves that issue, so... Well, any knight development move kind of solves that issue. So I'm probably going to play this. Or maybe I should take it, but it doesn't really matter, I suppose. But if I were to play bishop takes e2, I've got two pieces. I'm just a rook up. That's the correct thing. That's the thing to note, is that I'm just a rook up. So anyway, we're going to go back to 10f6, which is our main line. Which directly threatens to win a piece before white is ready to make it a convincing sacrifice. Shaw says, knight takes g4. I'd rather not retreat, but there are no appealing sacks. Queen e2, he says, definitely in the spirit of the gambit, and I would agree, but is not sound after b5 exclam. Bishop takes b5 or bishop b3, a5. So I'll go ahead and play this, and then I'll input this new variation. a5 forces white to weaken his queenside, leaving the knight without a haven. Bishop takes b5. Knight takes f4, g takes f4, knight takes f4, g takes f4. F takes e5, f takes e5, bishop e7, f takes e5, f takes e5, bishop e7. Over the board, anything can happen, but objectively, white is in trouble, especially as his king will be checked from h4 before it has a chance to castle long. 11, knight d3, so we're going to go back to f6, knight d3. Was once played by a great player, but is unattractive because of knight takes g3, bishop takes g3, bishop takes g3 check, king f1, and yeah, I would much rather have black in this position. It was Pillsbury Chigorin, Vienna 1903. White was the one with king problems, and a good start would have been 13 f5 for black. So back to the main line. Knight takes g4, queen e8 check. There are other moves for black, but this one is my main focus, as I believe it is best. For example, knight takes g3. Bishop takes g3, bishop takes g3, knight g2, or knight f2, I'm sorry. White was clearly better in Peterson Martinovsky correspondence 1996. In this position, 13 king d2 is also quite fine. Okay. 11 ... knight takes f4 is also a move, but is inflexible for black after g takes f4. Now queen e8 check, and white has the added option of king f1, which is not possible immediately after 11 queen e8, as we will see below. Okay. And 11 rook rook e8 check is in the lines of tempting but wrong, because after I was about to say, I assume king f2 looks the safest. King d2 is not daft either. But I agree, king f2 is the natural move. Knight takes f4, g takes f4, rook e4 got played, or is a variation. Black's play works in every line except one, so you kind of have to play it. Knight h6 check, king g7, queen h5, rook takes f4 check, king g2. Not the only square, but the best choice. Queen e7, defending f7, and white will win if he finds the only move, bishop to d3. And just looking at this, every move looks absolutely terrible, other than, I mean, that's a move I would probably make too, because nothing else makes any sense in the position. And this stops both queen e4 check and queen e3. Rook g1. Wait, what? Oh, this move got played in a game once. Queen e4 check, and white resigns, and that was Franken Joschling so I assume both German. Zoschling, email 2005. Okay. And although King H2 check here is... So is Rook G4 check. If we go back to this one, play 17, Knight D2, Queen E3, Knight F3. Black has two pretty wins. Bishop G4. I agree, that's pretty. Or Queen E4. Where the main threat is Queen G6 check when the H6 knight is a goner. In this position, Bishop D3. Queen G6 double exclam, baby. That's pretty. That is pretty. An unusual queen exchange. Bishop takes G6. H takes G. And the white queen is trapped. And the H6 knight is also trapped. So, two trapped pieces. Okay, so we go back to the main line. Bishop D3, King H8. Queen E3 allows mate in 2. We'll go ahead and show you that. And I'll actually give a little bit of a pause here, but it's pretty obvious that the mate is queen here, and it doesn't matter where the king moves. Takes here. So here, that's mate, or that's mate. It doesn't matter which. I guess I should show you this one as well. And after here, checkmate. Okay? So you can't play that. King H8 is the move. Knight F7 check. And Shaw says this line may look like a complete mess, but white has everything under control. King G7. Queen takes H7 check. King forced to F8. Knight takes D6. Rook G4 check. King to F3. Queen takes D6. I assume you don't want to trade queens. I'm not sure why, though. Queen takes D6. Queen H6 check. King G8. King E2. Back to safety. Followed by Queen D5. Queen H7 check. King to F8. Queen H8 check. King to F7. And Rook F1, and white has an advantage. Okay, so back to the main line. King to D2 here. Perhaps the center and queen side feel more secure, but this is an illusion. The white king would be safer going the other way. Okay. King F2 is covered in the next section. Let's actually look at King F1 as well, which allows bishop takes F4, G takes F4, Knight G3 check, which, yeah, okay. Instead of moving the king, white does have one blocking option. bishop e3. This can be met in many ways, but this can be met in many ways. Where was it? But I'll offer one line in particular I like for black. King to h8. And he says he's a fan of this move in many places throughout this variation. King is safe, and bishop takes g4 becomes a real threat, while black keeps maximum flexibility in where his pieces will develop. Queen e4 leads to a mess, of course, but white may wriggle through the problems. For example, I'll go ahead and show queen e4 in the variation. Knight h6, check. King g7, king d2. Rook e8. Queen takes h5. Queen takes there. E3 check, king d1. The analysis could stretch forever, but the only question is whether white is better or only drawing, so black should reject queen e4. So after, where was it, king h8, we'll go back to this line. King h8, 14 bishop e2. White seems to be threatening knight h6, winning plenty of material, but black can simply keep developing. Knight d7. Knight h6, rook takes... Rook takes g3 isn't possible. Bishop takes g3 is. Did I miss a move? King h8 here. Oh, I missed a move in there. I'm sorry. Okay, king h8. King h8, 13, king d2. Rook g8. Here we go. Bishop e2. That makes a lot of sense. Now. Okay. Yep. Sorry about that, guys. Here we go. Rook takes g3. Knight f5. b6. With... I'm an idiot. Sorry about that. Knight b6. Now we have a branching point. We must consider taking the piece, but black unleashes a vicious attack, so let's go ahead and show you that. Bishop takes h5, knight c4 check. King c1, queen b5, targeting this square, which would be mate. b3, bishop f takes f5, and black's attack is very strong, and I don't want to play this as white. Not this variation. The point is that white cannot safely grab the next piece. B takes c4. Queen takes c4. Bishop e2. The best try, but not good enough. Queen a4, exclam. For example, bishop h6. Rook e8. a3, rook e4. bishop d3, rook takes d4, rook a2, and rook takes d5, and this is the best a computer can do to hold together white's position, and it is still in that unhappy place between much worse and lost by force. White's best is going back to move 17, so after knight b6, knight takes g3, knight takes g3, and black has great play, for example, rook e1, knight takes d5, bishop d3, knight takes e3. After rook e3 or bishop f4, oh, rook e3, bishop f4, duh. Or queen f3, knight gf5. White is hoping a defensive miracle will allow him to hang on to equality. White should avoid all this mess. So after king d2, knight takes f4, g takes f4. Now black has a crunching move, queen e4, and there's a simplistic old chess saying which goes something like this: biggest piece to the middle is usually a good move. Simplistic and true. I'm imagining some readers rushing to perform a clever search on their database to disprove this rule. There are probably a few. I mentioned above the importance of judging king safety. The obvious check and capture here. Oops, that's not obvious check and capture. Here allows white to escape after king c3. Okay, king c3. One point is that the loose bishop offers white a tempo to consolidate. For example, b5, queen f3. And position's a mess, but okay, supposedly white is better here. And this is why I like the King's Gambit. It's a mess. Okay, so we have to go back to after queen e4, king c3, b5. Black keeps throwing punches, not giving the white king a moment to catch his breath. White has no escape, but it takes accuracy and great deal to prove that. Two lines to consider are rook g1 and bishop takes b5. So I'll input that. And it said bishop takes b5. Okay? And we're going to look at rook g1 first. Rook g1, king h8, knight d2. King h8, knight d2. Queen d3 doesn't help. Wait. Oh, sorry. Queen d3 for white doesn't help. After queen here. Okay. So after knight d2, king h8, knight d2, b4 check is a killer. Needlessly fancy but fun. There's no such thing as needlessly fancy. If it still wins, play as fancy as you like, okay? Bishop b4 check. King takes b4, a5, king c3, b4 check, king b3, a4 check, king takes b4, queen takes d4, king a3, and bishop f5. And black's attack should get there eventually. And, you know, this is the type of position I would be playing as black just because, come on, you don't not play this. But this is the main line. King B3. Queen takes D4. And the main threat is knight D7 to knight C5. 18 C3. A4 is of course met with B takes A3, and that is not something I'd want to play. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that. Here we go. C3. Knight C6. Heading for A5 in most cases, but this isn't the queen on pre. C takes D4. Knight takes D4 check. King A4. Bishop D7 check. King A5. C5. Forced march has led to a mating net. D takes C6. Knight takes C6 check. King A4. Knight D4 check. B5, or sorry, bishop B5. King A5, rook FB8. So we go back to bishop B5. Bishop takes B5 check, King A5, and rook AB8. White can delay but not avoid mate. The direct threat is knight C6, but if that is stopped, black can afford the methodical buildup. Say rook C1, rook B6. Okay, so that that looks like a fun line for black. I wish we could all do this, drag our opponent's king up the board. I wish that happened every game. So we have to go back to before rook G1. Sorry. Okay, instead we play bishop takes B5. King H8. Blah, 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 king safety, all that stuff. C5 would just give white the momentum he needs to play rook G1, king H8, B3, and then white might just escape. So I'll actually show that. Was it C6 or C5? C5. New variation would give white the opportunity to play this, 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 and he's probably escaping. It's tough, but he's somehow doing okay. So king H8. Knight A3, B3 is the move white wants to work, but B3 is the move white wants to work, but this is a little bit of a rude wake-up call. Somebody named Jensen pointed out that bishop E2 is crushed by knight C6. The idea is that D takes, queen takes, bishop C4, bishop takes G4, queen takes, queen takes. Apparently, in desperation, the computer mentions. We go back. After king H8. Apparently in Desperation, Computer mentions knight takes f6, rook takes f6, b3, but black should eventually win after, for example, queen takes d5, bishop c4, queen a5 check, king b2, knight c6. And the extra piece will have it say before the pawns are any threat. (16) Knight d2. Queen takes d5, gains a nasty tempo. For example, 17 a4, a6. Bishop c4, queen a5 check, king d3, knight c6, followed by some enjoyable target practice. So let's go back to the knight a3 move. Knight a3, c5, new variation. Ripping open the queen side is certainly the way to go. Black is 3 pawns down, so it is vital to do damage before the king can hide, for example, b2 to b3 and king b2.